Oh, so today it is May 31st, 2011 for channel member John. May, huh? Just doesn't sound right. The rare May show here. And once again in New Jersey, this time Holmdel, New Jersey, at the PNC Bank Arts Center. I had a little trouble with the Bank Arts back to back. It's like, well, which is it? You know, is this an art center or is it a corporately named arena? That's a little bit of both, venue, that is. So we are moving on, and overall the show, I think, probably leaned a little too heavy on the covers, and not like, Cross-Eyed and Painless, or just the type of covers that really just sort of fit, like a very specific era. Classic rock covers, Rock and Roll, After Midnight, Fire, and Drowned, all kind of, somewhat dominating the show. And perhaps it was because there was a not mostly, but a disastrous moment in Divided Sky. So perhaps after that, they were like, you know what, let's play it safe here. Let's just go with some classic rock, quickly get into a jam, and play Alaska late in the show. And the Divided Sky, Trey obviously turned that into something funny. You know, sometimes there's a flub where everybody ignores it and we move on. And sometimes it's so bad, like at this point, Trey he let go of his guitar, just let it hang there, and kind of did that, kind of washed his hands of it. And then he grabbed the microphone, aimed it at the crowd, and then claimed, I did that on purpose, which then got a loud roar from the crowd. So he turned it around, turned a major mistake into a very funny moment, and perhaps the highlight of the first set, maybe the most noteworthy moment of the whole show. Nothing bad, really. A very steady first set. Chalk Dust, Rogue, Punch You in the Eye is how it opened up, the Chalk Dust. Kind of any era, Chalk Dust can just rage if it wants. A cool Rogue hadn't reached its 3.0 peak yet, but a Punch You in the Eye had a moment there where they were going to play around with the intro, and then they just got down to it. Moma Dance, pushed a little later in the first set, was welcome. And then one of our first classic rock era covers, Rock and Roll, and then a Sand. I said that Divided Sky flub highlighted the first set. In fact, it was probably the Sand 2 back-to-back. Kind of got elbowed out of the way on the tube, not much really is what I'm saying here. Sand hogged it, but if I was starting, I'll be honest, the Rock and Roll, there is video of this show, in fact, on YouTube, but pretty solid video, actually. I was starting to maybe lose focus a little bit, but this Sand, it's impossible. It pulls you back in, Godfather style. So then you get the Divided Sky with the moment. That's probably worth checking out. What was it? Maybe I'll even I'll put that down in the description or something. Maybe timestamp it right at the flub. And then Character Zero ending the first set. Look, you probably could have called that one a mile away at this time in their career. They took a chance. They were feeling good. They played Divided Sky. One of their meatier songs when it comes to the needing the ability. And they blew it. So then they fall back on Character Zero, knocking people dead. Chomper Anthem, ending things. So then we get into quickly right back to the covers, I don't know if they gave Trey a talking to at set break, and he was like, fine, I'll play some easy stuff. After Midnight, Possum, Drowned, and the Possum was roaring. I'm sure this is one of them shows, if you were there, it was more impressive. The Drowned had a cool jam at the end. It's getting late there, dark by this point. That was probably a pretty cool moment. Then just a ripping maze. If there was ever times when maybe they started to lose people or focus was being drifting here, they would just hit you with a burner. This time it was Maze. Then there was Dirt in Alaska. I like Alaska, Ocelot's brother, cousin, brother-in-law, I'm not sure, really. Very, very, very much related, like No Men and Blazon, of course. Alaska and Ocelot, that is. And then You Enjoy Myself. They were like, you know what, let's take it. And then You Enjoy Myself went much better than Divided Sky. Pushed late into the set, though. Not a lot of time to boogie around post-tramps. A mild jam there. Trey had a little problem on the trampolines. Surprisingly, Mike looked way more comfortable on the trampolines at this point. Sometimes Mike looks a little stiff, and Trey looks like a natural up there. Not the case, Trey looked like, oh wow, now that I'm sober and old, this is not as easy. He held it together, though. It looked like at one point he was just going to go flying off that thing into Mike, but he did not. And then we get a vocal jam into a Fire encore, and boom, that wraps up the show. Like I said, kind of leaned a little heavy. The After Midnight jammed out, the Drown jammed out, the Rock and Roll, the Fire encore. Maybe leaned into that type of cover a little too much. And I'm blaming the Divided Sky. Although they did go for the You Enjoy Myself, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours later, whatever it was, if you include the set break, they were back. Trey was like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready. Haven't flubbed a single song all set. All right, so I had to play other people's music. All right, boom, we're out of here. Thanks for being a member, John L., and thank you for the request. Another 2011 show chopped off the list, you know? And I nearly got through the video without saying, I don't know why. I nearly got through the video without saying 2011. I wasn't a big fan, wasn't going to shows, wasn't listening. All right, enough, out of here.